I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. 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 I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, okay?
Hey you! Welcome back to I'm Sorry, Okay? A podcast where we are watching so much Degrassi. I'm Mary, here with Paul. This week we watched Season 3, Episode 11 of Degrassi Junior High, Taking Off Part 1. This episode was written by Jan Moore, directed by Kit Hood, and originally aired on February 6th, 1989. In this episode, a card from his biological father and fighting with his grandmother lead Wheels to a decision. Shane is introduced to hard drugs. Content warning for this episode, we will be discussing drug use and child abduction and predatory behavior. As with all two-part episodes, I guess, there's like a serious content warning.
Oh yeah, if it's a two-parter, you're in for a lot.
Yeah. And actually, I think the TV Guide did a pretty good job with this description.
Yeah, Wheels is led to make a decision. That feels extremely vague for what the what a character select in an arcade game kind of decision or something else.
Right, like these two specific things make him make this like quote unquote decision, but it's really like a culmination of things, right? Like it's been building up to this because he's sort of under all this pressure.
True. Yeah.
Because he just doesn't want to do anything because he's grieving.
A wild up all around. And again, missing from the pod this week, LD is still busy with the grand reopening of the Glasgow Zine Library. We miss her very much. She should be returning soon. If you happen to find yourself in Glasgow, you should definitely stop by. They are now open and available by appointment only. You can get all the info you need at glasgowzinelibrary.com or on Instagram and Twitter at Glasgow Zine Lib.
Yes, please stop by and say hi for us because we are too far away.
We are,
and now we're feeling it now that we don't get to record together every week. But yeah, LD will be back soon. Okay, so should we just get into this one? I feel like we're going to have a lot to discuss.
Yeah, let's just go right to it.
All right, so we open at the Wheeler house. Wheels comes home and his grandma asks where he's been. He tells her he was at school, but we all know he hasn't been going to school, and she calls him out on it.
Yeah, he really tries to like go along with this, and I think she just says like, how was school? It feels like I maybe I should have taken better notes, but I think she kind of does
just says like, where were you? He says school, and then they're kind of talking some more, and then she's like, so how was school today?
Yeah,
she knows he's lying, and she's trying to catch him.
She's really trying to like kind of trap him, which she's like old and probably pretty tired, so like she just doesn't really have it in her to deal with this kid.
She's already raised her kids, right?
Yeah, like
she's already done that. She wasn't expecting to take on a teenager at this age, and with his grandfather, we don't even hear him speak, so it seems like it's mostly falling on Grandma Eva here. Like, I think that her husband, his grandfather, isn't even able to contribute very much. Like, He just seems like he's just kind of there. So she's sort of taking care of both of them.
Right. Yeah, like normally the kind of passive aggression that she meets Wheels with, I'd be quick to call out. But I gotta give, I mean, in the case of pretty much any grandma, I'd say gotta give grandma a pass.
Yes.
Definitely the
grandma,
case here.
Grandma always gets the benefit of the doubt. And it seems like this is like a repeated conversation between them.
Yeah, she's probably sick of it.
Yeah. All right, but she does tell him that there's a postcard from his biological father, and he grabs it to go read it in his room. And then he also calls her an old bag when he's in his room.
He really does just call her an old bag.
Justice for Grandma Eva. I think she's doing her best.
I mean, yeah, she like tries to give him and again, like I think this is something that I would be a little bit more harsh about if it were like a quote unquote normal parenting situation. She tells him about this card. So like obviously his interest is immediately directed toward this like correspondence from his biological dad. His adoptive parents are gone. He like barely has a relationship with his biological dad. And so he gets this like postcard, and then Grandma just kind of takes like the absolute worst moment to like call this kid out about how he hasn't been at school. Like this is the time that she chooses. And like, Grandma.
She is nagging him. Like technically I think this qualifies as nagging, and it just seems like she really doesn't know like what else to do. And yes, from Wheels' perspective, like imagine suddenly, you know, your grandparents who he probably loved and had a perfectly fine relationship with before, but now all of a sudden they're like they're in control of your life. They're trying to tell you what to do, where to go, how to like kind of feel. And like it's just a weird dynamic. It's like it's not the way that he knew his grandparents. And then all of a sudden he's just supposed to accept that now they have all this like authority over him. Usually your grandparents are just like, you know, the nice part of your relationship is that they don't have authority over you. And so it's just all the like good parts of being close to them without the like kind of more complicated dynamics of like
like ideally they're just sort of hooking it up with treats, like letting you watch some wrestling. Like it's supposed to be like ideally it is a more casual relationship.
My grandma stayed with me once for like a week or something when my parents were on vacation, and I mostly remember that she just offered to make me a lot of sandwiches.
Sure.
And there was literally zero drama. So Wheels reads the postcard from Mike in his room, and it's like wishing him a happy birthday, even though it is not his birthday. And then also telling him just enough information so that he can try to find Mike later.
Well, yeah, he mentions that he has like a two-week residency gig in Port Hope. So, you know, this guy who I think his whole thing is that he's like traveling around a lot, either as a tour, apparently as a touring musician. I do remember Mike was pretty technically adept at the drums, but I don't know what the scene in Canada is like in '89. It feels a little unrealistic that this guy is really that much of a like vagabond or whatever, but sure. Okay. It is unique. I think that he's got this 2-week stint where he's going to be in one place for this long.
Right. It is kind of like most people that we know that like play music, including ourselves, have like a day job.
Right.
And then maybe tour like part of the time. But yeah, he's like, seems like he's touring all the time, which does seem sort of unusual. And then, this like 2-week gig, but like,
who knows? You know, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more programs in Canada that support active musicians. I can't speak to that, but I'm just going to pretend that, you know, maybe he's got a lot of support from the Canadian government and he's living the dream.
Yes, he's living the dream over in Port Hope.
Yeah.
And then after reading the postcard, Wheels stares out the window longingly at the highway.
Yep.
And then so we also get like a voiceover of like Mike reading the actual postcard, which I think is sort of a clue that we might be seeing him next week. But yeah, the contents make it seem like he maybe doesn't know that Wheels' parents have like died.
Right. It's the way that it's extremely casual makes it seem like he has no idea.
And he's literally like, for me, things are going great. I'm just like, I'd like to think that Mike would not be saying that if he knew the situation that Wheels was in.
Mike's, but he's just a casual guy. He's just a chill dude.
Good old Mike. He ends the postcard with good luck.
Yeah. Yep.
Love it. All right. Thanks, Mike. So over at Degrassi, Mr. Garcia is giving a presentation on math and maps, and somehow everyone is fully engaged. He lets them know that their school photos have finally arrived, and in each envelope they will find the photograph and the price list. He rattles off even more details while they collect their photos because he is a details king.
Details king, but also a deadpan king, and he's just like, you can get them now.
Like, he's like so much control over this class, but it's like you can tell that they kind of respect him, but yeah, he's like so monotone.
You know, and just kind of, I'll dwell on this for a minute. I hadn't really thought about how little we've seen of Radich this past season.
Yeah, true.
And like, we're getting a lot more of Garcia, and like, oh, praise the Degrassi, you know, writers, overlords, whoever made the decision to like give us like more Garcia, less Radich. Like, let's see like a real teacher in action. This is great.
Yes.
Great stuff.
Very authentic teacher portrayal.
He's just a guy. He's just a guy who's got a job and he's good at it.
Yeah. So after class, Liz and Spike make plans to meet up for Gourmet Scum. We'll kind of see them in the background, but we don't really like hear much from them this episode.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Garcia stops Snake on his way out and asks him to bring Wheels his school photo. And then he asks him to do Wheels a favor and let him know that he has to start coming back to school again for his own good and because the law says he has to, and that Mr. Garcia will help him catch up.
It's kind of the longest message you could possibly ask somebody to relay, but it's all like crucial info. Like,
yeah, but you're right. Snake kind of like I was like, does he need a pen to like write this down? Because
like
Mr. Garcia just like keeps going and tell him this and tell him this, and Snake is sort of like, and then he literally shares none of this message.
No, he really doesn't. Well, yeah, maybe not. I already don't remember. We also, just with the Spike and Liz scene of them like being really adorably excited about the Gourmet Scum gig, I wouldn't necessarily say this is a who is she? But we get a quick shot of like these two girls behind Liz and Spike that are totally eavesdropping and like talking major shit about Gourmet Scum. What is that?
Apparently Gourmet Scum is like a controversial band because like it seems like everyone truly does love them or hate them.
I guess that's true.
Or pretend to like them to go on a date.
All right. Well, fair enough, I suppose.
But yeah, I also love these two rando girls because it's just like so real. Just like, oh, you're excited about something? Let me make fun of you behind your back.
Actually, that band sucks.
So Joey makes plans with Luke and Shane to meet up and sit together at Gourmet Scum. And then after Joey leaves, Shane asks Luke if he got the stuff, but Luke couldn't find the guy. And so we find out they're trying to buy acid before the concert from this guy that hangs out in front of the stadium.
Which, like, yeah, classy. Great. That's where you want to get your stuff from.
Yes, always trust the acid man outside of the stadium.
Luke is wearing a sick Gourmet Scum shirt, though. I will say that.
Is this the one? It almost seems like there's something like sewn on to the shirt. We see a variety of Gourmet Scum merchandise throughout this episode. This seems homemade.
Yes, Luke seems like custom made. Like it seems like he cut out a different shirt, like the logo, and then sewed it onto another Gourmet Scum shirt. Like it looks like a patch, like a patch on a shirt. I don't know. It's a lot, but it's great.
And so it seems like Luke has definitely done acid before, but not Shane. Shane asks him what it's like, and Luke tells him it's like flying.
Yeah. Can we just talk about how this MF was just last week lecturing Spike about being responsible, and now he's just turning around out here spending money on drugs, bro? Like this is like why you couldn't give Spike the child
wait
support?
a minute. I thought he was broke because he spent his... I didn't even think about that. He spent his money on the ticket, but apparently he's got more money for drugs because they're not just like giving those away.
Yeah, it's a really bad look for Shane this week. Like, not like if you're thinking about the continuity between last week and this week, it's like, dude.
He does. There's something, the way that he's like so excited, it just feels so real to like that age though, and like doing something you're not supposed to. And I think he does have this like streak in him, right? Because this is probably why he like had sex in the first place, and now he's doing drugs. He seems like very
Impulsive.
Yeah. He seems very impulsive for like experiences that he's like not supposed to be like having.
Yeah, or just it seems like he's not ready for it, basically.
Or that he's not ready for it. Yeah, maybe, yeah, more accurately, because he does not seem ready for any of this. And every time he makes one of these decisions, there are extreme consequences.
That is the Degrassi way, though.
Yes. Yeah, he should know. All right, so after school, Joey and Caitlin make plans to do some math together.
Sure.
Caitlin tells him it's not that hard once you understand the concepts, which sort of seems like, well, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely.
That is the most obvious information you could give someone.
You just got to understand the concepts, and then it's like, no problem. And then Snake invites Joey to drop off the school photos with him. And then also when they're leaving school, Joey like uses Snake to balance on his skateboard, and it's like a very cute like true friendship moment, because we don't usually see Snake actually being very fun. Like he's usually just really worried or like snarky about something.
Well, and they're kind of talking about heavy stuff with Wheels, and like Joey is sort of like Snake sort of mentions his conversation with Garcia, and Joey's like pretty defensive of Wheels here and is just like, his parents died, dude. But yeah, no, they like the dynamic that they have going during this kind of heavy conversation. I mean, we're about to hit up an arcade here, and to me, it's got major Homer Simpson, Bart Simpson in the Simpsons arcade game, where Bart's got his little skateboard and they're just sort of like going along together. I don't know.
Cute.
Great game.
So they find Wheels at the arcade where he's playing The Main Event, a professional wrestling arcade game.
Yes, he is.
Wrestling!
Can I share a little bit of information about this arcade game?
Please do.
I'm just a huge fan of these old like button masher wrestling games. So The Main Event is indeed a real arcade game, which was released by Konami in 1988. So a year prior to the release of this episode. It featured wrestlers that were based on WWF wrestlers that were popular at the time, like Hulk Hogan and Coco Beware. That's about all I got to share. But like, you know, these kind of games, it's just sort of like you basically feed them quarters. Like they kind of mention the like cost of this game. And these are the kind of games where if you get beat up too much, you just got to like keep feeding it money to like regain your health. So it's, I mean, I'd say like any arcade is sort of like that. It's like designed to steal your quarters. And we definitely see that from Wheels here.
Well, yeah. And so Joey asks where he got the money to be like hanging out at the arcade all day. And he tells them that he sold his bass. Bro.
For me personally, selling an instrument is a big deal. Like if you play it enough, it kind of becomes a part of you. And like the idea to me, and I think to Joey here too, of like selling something that is like, it's like an artistic tool, you know, and it's just, Wheels is clearly just like nowhere near being in a place to like think about things like this either. But I have a similar reaction to Joey here, I think.
Yeah, Joey's like super upset about it, and he kind of gets into it with Wheels, and then Snake does his like Libra best to like stop the fight and like distract them with the idea of like getting fries. But yeah, Joey's like really upset. He's like, what about the band? And you know, and Wheels tells him like Zit Remedy's a joke.
He calls it a joke.
Yeah.
Ooh. Huh, he's not wrong.
We only know one song.
Well, that's also true. He's not wrong. And you know, and he's like, we weren't even doing anything anyway. And Joey's like, well, because if you came to school, because that's where they would practice. And it's just, I think that I think like you're saying, like how it becomes a part of yourself. I think that's the thing, right? Is it is a part of himself, but it's a part of his former self. And he
Yes.
doesn't connect to that part of himself anymore. And not only that, but the night that his parents were killed, they were recording this demo. I think he
Yeah.
just can't associate himself with it anymore because things feel like too different now.
Yeah, it's pretty directly connected to like major trauma. So it does make sense that he would just be like, I got to move on from that.
Yeah. But then also that Joey just like, I mean, Joey will never let go, as
Poor
we know.
Joey.
Oh, buddy. All right. So then they go grab some fries, and Wheels complains about his grandma asking him to do some pretty basic things like turning down the radio, cleaning his room, and going to school. But he's over it. And he says if she keeps it up, he's going to run away to be with his bio dad in Port Hope, wherever that is.
Yeah, and she's not his like mom. So,
Yeah.
that's-
Joey says like, oh, that sounds like my mom. And then Wheels is sort of like, yeah, but she's not my mom. And it seems like that's the real issue for him.
Yeah.
And then Joey also is like, well, when Zit Remedy gets back together, like we're going to go on tour just like your bio dad. But like both Wheels and Snake don't believe him. And then Joey's like,
Have I ever lied to you before? Yes.
then he's like, well, I can change. And they all have like a little bromance laughing at the idea of Joey ever changing in any way.
We do get another classic Joey line of,
Guys, trust me.
Yes, the Joey Jeremiah classic. And then when Wheels like shows the postcard to them, and then that's when Snake points out that Mike is off by a month about his birthday. I'm not trying to be too critical of Mike, because it is kind of like if you're sending mail, you do sort of send it around the time, and like you might just say happy birthday. But I think it's just Snake sort of trying to be like cautious here and just sort of being like, this dude doesn't really know you.
exactly, yes. That's the main thing, I think, is that he just doesn't know Wheels. I don't, like you're saying, you're trying not to be hard on Mike. I'm not even sure if it's something to like be hard on Mike about. Like he doesn't really have any real stake in this arrangement. Like Wheels has been legally adopted by two other people. Like, and it doesn't seem like it's an open adoption. So Mike's like living his life, and like I would say generously he's doing his best to keep up with Wheels and everything. And so, I mean, it'd be nicer if Mike doesn't seem like the kind of guy who like keeps a lot of information written down. He doesn't seem like he's got a lot of like sort of important details.
He's on the road.
Yeah, he's, and that's like its own thing. It's its own life. So, just being generous to Mike here, it is sort of like, I get why Wheels isn't so bothered by this like sort of time discrepancy.
Right. You don't have to take like great offense to it. And it is like Mike is just trying to like build some kind of relationship and keep in touch. So yeah,
Yes.
he's not like doing anything wrong, but unfortunately Wheels is sort of reading too much into it because he's looking like for
There's
an
so
escape.
much. Yeah, there's so much else going on that like just Mike is not aware of.
He
Poor
thinks
buddy.
that like just because Mike is his biological dad, their relationship is going to be different than like his relationship with his grandparents who have known him for his whole life. But I think his identity is just really, it's just complicated. His identity feels complicated right now.
Yeah.
All right. So next we have drugs and the gig.
A classic combo.
While Tim is buying a gourmet scum shirt outside of the show, Shane and Luke are buying acid from the Acid Man.
Bolivian blue?
Shane is being extremely obvious about it. And Tim does not approve and drops some acid myths on them, but they are unfazed, and he and Luke take it anyway before meeting up with Joey, Snake, and BLT and heading into the concert.
So right before all of this, we actually also get a quick shot of Liz and Spike getting ready for their good, wholesome time. And yeah, I think the way the like sort of camera pans from them walking in just to go see a concert. That's literally all these two have.
They're talking about their outfits.
Yeah.
Spike is like, do I look okay? They both have like cool outfits they put
They
together.
both look
It's like
cool
the
as
fun.
hell.
It's like the really fun part of going to a show, right? Like wearing something cool, hanging out with your friend, like very wholesome.
Yeah, so not to belabor the whole like everything I kind of brought up with Shane's reaction to Spike last week, but so, we just sort of get even more of that here. It's like Spike is just trying to like have a good time. She made all of these arrangements to make sure that her baby is being taken care of, and that like this, like being able to make it to the show like financially makes sense. And then it just sort of pans over to, for lack of a better word, this fuckery that is like going down with like Shane. And like you said, like Shane is just like blowing up this situation and just, oh dude, acid. Oh, is this really acid?
He's
and
like waving it around. Yep. We both just did the exact same gesture. He's waving around.
God.
He's like, I thought it would be like basically like, I didn't think this is what it would look like whatever. And Luke is kind of like, be cool.
Yeah, and then he also hilariously calls out Shane for being a dork and is just like,
If you can't eat paper, maybe you're not ready for acid.
I mean, I guess.
All right. Well, and since, Tim kind of shares this like myth about mixing LSD with strychnine, which is a poison, so that it stays in your body. So I actually looked up some acid facts from Medical News Today.
Yeah, you had to look these up because, as we discussed prior to recording, neither of us have ever done acid.
Oh, yeah. No, I have never done acid. I have no desire to ever do acid. I am appropriately afraid, like Tim.
Lay these facts down on us,
All
since we're too much of a couple of dorks to actually know anything about it ourselves.
We're some dorks. So acid is a slang term for lysergic acid dithylamide, LSD. It belongs to a group of substances called psychedelics. It can alter a person's thoughts, feelings, and the way they perceive the world around them. When a person uses acid, they become disconnected from reality. They may see, hear, and sense things that are not real. They may also have strong emotions. This is known as a trip. It's a powerful mind-altering chemical. It can last up to 12 hours, and a person cannot control when the trip ends. So some people who have used acid have had a bad trip, which means their experience was unpleasant, and a bad trip may be terrifying or deeply disturbing. However, there are recent studies to also suggest that LSD may have use as a treatment for mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety.
Tight. I mean, hallucinogens can be cool. I think if you're like at an appropriate age and if you feel like an appropriate place in your life. I have experience doing mushrooms. I have no complaints personally. But not something I would recommend for someone who is about to go to a show and has no experience with any hallucinogens whatsoever. I think we just, at the very least, like Degrassi is definitely like creating a situation where it's just like, yes, obviously this is a bad choice. And of course, we're going to do this. We're going to try this one thing that maybe isn't the smartest thing. And as we were saying before with some of Shane's decisions in the past, it's not going to exactly lead. It seems as though it's not going to lead to anywhere that Shane wants to be.
You don't know how you're going to react to a substance like this. And so going into what could be a really overwhelming situation just seems like the potential to have a bad time is like very strong.
Yeah, everyone's bodies are different, and I'm sure that everybody's bodies react differently to these sorts of things. And so, yeah, it's just sort of like extremely ill-advised. Luke is the one with experience here. And I think if someone were to have had experience, like a mature person were to have had experience with this substance, it would sort of be the thing where you'd be like, let's try this, like, while we're chilling at home or like in a more controlled environment. And then if you're into it, we can get it again and try it at the show. Still maybe not a great idea, but it's just sort of like, yeah, Luke is just really throwing Shane into the deep end here. And, kind of not cool.
Yeah. And, like these kids are 15. Like their
Seriously.
brains are still developing. And so anything that's sort of like mind altering, you especially like don't know what kind of effect it's going to have. And so, yeah, you're talking about like making a really careful, considerate, thoughtful plan. But of course that's not what 15-year-olds are going to do. They're just going to like, get it outside the concert and then go, just like be way more reckless.
Absolutely.
I've seen people in high school sort of like go down this path, and it's like, it's sad to watch because it can change a person. And I think that's another thing too that we're seeing is like, Shane maybe not so much because Shane has sort of always been like this. With Wheels, I guess more so you're seeing how his situation is like changing him. With Shane, his personality hasn't necessarily changed, but he is making like riskier decisions, and he's kind of setting himself down this path that like, it might get harder and harder to sort of like come back from.
Yeah.
But on a more positive note, we barely get to see it, but BLT is wearing my look of the week.
Hey.
So he's got on like a black turtleneck with a purple Gourmet Scum t-shirt over it and a black hat and a patch on it. And I just love a t-shirt over a turtleneck. It's one of my favorite looks.
Well, and we were just talking a couple weeks ago about how like BLT looks great every single week.
It was like last week. Yeah, it was me. I was like, he's never my look of the week. And then, I saw him this week and I was like, there it is.
Because his fashion sense usually leans more toward like sort of sport jock like kind of look.
Yeah.
But the previous time that you had given up your look of the week to BLT, he was in a similarly sort of like more punk rock, like sort of
I'm
screen
very into
printed
his t-shirt collection.
Yeah. BLT. I mean, so all that is to say that, again, to reiterate, BLT is constantly killing it, but I love that you are keeping it consistent. And
I'm shouting out those t-shirts when I see them.
Oh, yeah. Good job, BLT.
All right, so then we get an extremely wholesome moment with Wheels and his unnamed maternal grandfather. Sorry, I saw him described that way somewhere, and I just decided that is how I will also refer to him. So Wheels and unnamed maternal grandfather are watching wrestling.
Hey, yay.
But then Grandma Eva gets home, and the sass starts.
I again, just a little bit more about wrestling. I've heard the story many times that it is a time-honored tradition for some wrestling fans that a grandparent was sort of the gateway into the wrestling community, and like somebody as a younger child watching wrestling with their grandma or grandpa. So I love seeing it being played out here on this show. Like for really, I mean, not really to serve any greater purpose or plot. It's just like a nice directorial choice, it seems like.
Yeah, I was trying to think, like, does this have some greater meaning? Like, is it supposed to represent the tension, or like what's the purpose? But then I think it's just like they just like wrestling. I don't know. Like they're having a great time, and like his grandfather still like doesn't say anything, but he's like smiling, and like they're like hanging out together. He seems to have a better relationship with his grandfather, even though they're never like having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But he like greets him like earlier when he came home. He like gave him a little Miss Avery shoulder touch and like said hi. And now they're kind of hanging out together. So he's really focusing all of his anger towards his grandma, and his grandma's the one that's sort of having to be like the authoritarian.
Yeah. One more quick note about the match they're watching. They are watching WWE Hall of Famer, the Birdman, Coco Beware, who I just mentioned earlier was also in that arcade game.
Oh.
Love that consistency.
I will say the commentary was like, I feel like they added it later because I don't think it made sense to what was happening in the match.
I mean, unfortunately, this is not a wrestling podcast, but I also caught that.
All right. So, Grandma is like telling him, like, I brought chicken home for dinner. And Wheels is like, I'm not hungry. I already had fries. She's like, hey, I asked you to do the dishes earlier. And he's like, I forgot. She's like, hey, we're all really worried about you. And he just like blows her off. They're just having the most like mundane fight, but he's like so mad about it.
He's blowing this up for sure.
Oh, yeah. And then so she tells him that she talked to his social worker, and he thinks that Wheels should be in a group home. She's worried that she and his grandpa are too old to take care of him, but he thinks that they're just trying to get rid of him.
I mean, there's like so much real stuff going on, like that they're addressing in this one scene. And just that, like, I'd say the biggest part of all of this is that, these two are like literally old and infirmed. Like the grandma is like the only healthy one of the two. So like you were saying earlier, she's like kind of taking care of both of these people.
Yeah. And Wheels just doesn't respect her. He doesn't respect her or what she's doing. And he just turns like everything into an argument with her. And then he goes into his room and he calls her an old bag again.
Shut up, you old bag!
Oh my God, Wheels.
I'm just kind of like, you know what? If you're going to say it to her face, Wheels.
Yeah, what a coward.
Yeah. Just slam the door, call her an old bag. And once again, for asking him to do the most basic things.
I mean, this is after he really took exception to the group home, part of the discussion, which
seemed
is
like a threat to him.
It seemed like a threat to him. I mean, obviously coming from like her, it's not a threat, but like it's, for a quick definition, like group homes are places where teens with issues can get 24-hour supervision and support in a home-like setting. And so on paper, it sounds great, but it's just like probably not somewhere that you would want to end up if you're like in Wheels' situation. Like he's consistently been at home. That's like sort of been the only thing that's been consistent for him is like the place where he is living. And so then now we're talking about like actually putting him somewhere else. So literally there's like no, like any consistency that he had would be gone in this situation.
His grandparents moved into his family home. And he maybe doesn't say it now. I think he maybe says it later to Snake and Joey. But he's just like, I don't want to live with strangers. Yep. So it's like he can't. And I have to say, like throughout this, not that therapy solves everything, but I'm just like, get this kid in therapy. He's clearly not coping well. And so all they can sort of do, and even Mr. Garcia brings this up, is they're threatening him. It's the law that you have to go to school. If me and your grandpa can't take care of you, then you're going to have to go to a group home. It's like all of these threats, but it's like at the core of like this issue is grief. He's like grieving the loss of his parents and feeling really lost because he also had just found out that he was adopted. Wait, did he know he was adopted or he found out?
Yeah, I think he found out like in season 1. So like recently within the timeline of this show, he's like he's like learning this other like
which
pretty
is also
jarring,
like a kind of can be life-changing information depending on how it hits you.
If you've never known that and you're like an adolescent, I could easily see that.
And Wheels has always been a pretty sensitive person. Like we saw him be really caring towards Spike like in earlier seasons. Mm-hmm. And so now it's like he's got all of these emotions going on, and it doesn't seem like he really has a way to process them. Yeah. And it's like everyone's and I think this is kind of where Joey was coming from. Like everyone's expecting him to just like, well, you got to go to school. Well, you got to do this. Like you have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this. But it's like his parents died recently. Like he's struggling and like all he's getting from the adults around him are like threats, basically, or what feel like threats to him.
Kind of like straighten up and fly right, as if that's like real
Right.
advice.
Or as if he
Yeah.
got himself into trouble, but like he's
Right.
reacting to like trauma. Basically, maybe this kid should have a therapist instead of a social worker. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Or both. All right. So, Joey gets a call from Wheels asking him to meet him at the arcade in 20 minutes because he needs to borrow whatever money Joey has. 20 minutes is absolutely not enough time for Joey F. Jeremiah, F is for fashion, to get ready to go anywhere, but he reluctantly agrees.
So a few things here. We get a shot of Joey's messy ass room.
Yes,
And-
I love that his room is trashed.
And then just one more thing before we move on from, yes, this pretty hilarious scene of Joey being like just totally thrown off and disheveled by this phone call from Wheels. Gotta throw it out to Joey and his PJs as my look of the week.
Oh, wait a minute. His PJs like don't even match.
Yeah, the hell no, they don't. But I just love this. I love his little pattern button up and his messy tufts of hair. Like
Oh,
they
yeah.
were styling that.
The
His hair
bedhead
looks
is
great.
really good.
He looks amazing. Yeah, I did notice that his pants or whatever you call pajama
He's
bottoms.
wearing like, it's like a pajama top and then sweatpants on the bottom. Like it's clearly the top is from a set, but he's not wearing the set. He just put on sweatpants.
If that even feels like its own conscious choice to me, and I love that.
Yeah. And yeah, like, and the reason that Joey is so disheveled is because it's 10:30 a.m. and he hasn't even had a shower yet. And it's his day to shave. I just love that Joey's literally so upset that he has to he just woke up and he has to be somewhere in 20 minutes. I would also hate this scenario.
Extremely relatable.
Not enough time. So then Joey and Snake meet Wheels at the arcade again, and he tells them he's taking off. Title of the
Titular
episode.
line.
Yeah. They're both broke, but they give him all the cash they have left after the concert. Snake hates this plan and tries to talk Wheels out of it, but Wheels seems like he's made up his mind and he's going to hitchhike to Port Hope, which he found on a map.
Mm-hmm.
Joey gives him a bus ticket so that he can get to the highway and makes him promise to call when he gets there. So even Joey is like momming him.
Yeah, Joey's like definitely. Well, I'd say not. Well, okay. I'd say Snake is momming him, and I would
Okay.
say Joey is very much like daddy.
The daddy.
Where for lack of better, sort of gender identifying whatever, like Snake is like kind of asking all these questions and really skeptical,
Right.
asking about Wheels'
Right.
grandparents, where Wheels is just convinced that they actively want to get rid of him. And Joey is just like, what? I can't believe. So like Joey is like all in on everything Wheels is saying and like being I guess supportive. I don't know if supportive is really the word I would use in this situation because it's pretty obvious that Wheels isn't making the best choices here.
Right.
But like, yeah, Joey is kind of doing everything he can to like just be chill about like, Wheels, like they're all the same age. None of them have any real like control over the other. So I think Joey is like just doing his best to like sort of accept the situation as it is. And yeah, like he's like extending this like sort of extra offer of like I just where did he get a bus ticket? Like unclear. But he's like giving him this, but then he's also like kind of giving this like total like parental caveat of like make sure you call when you get
there.
yeah. So it's I like the sort of like dual ended dynamic that we get here with Snake and Joey.
Yeah, and after Wheels leaves, Joey says like, I want to run away sometimes too. So Joey is like sort of trying to relate, but I think that Snake is maybe a little more sheltered. And so he's more like realistic about like, what is this plan?
Sure.
And
yes.
he's expressing all the concern. So Joey doesn't really need to also do that. But I think you could tell like Joey's also not super like, Joey kind of
Yeah.
seems like Yeah, I've thought about it too. I probably wouldn't actually do it, but it's like you can't. He's determined to do this. You can't talk him out of it. So instead, they're trying to like help him. It's sort of this like, what are they supposed to do in this situation?
Snake was also the one who like got the talk from Garcia. So like Snake kind of knows that there are like real world consequences for a lot of these choices.
Right.
So that could be like playing a part in this like scene and
right. And he didn't share any of all that, but it
Right.
seems like he received that message from Garcia.
Right.
And then Joey and Snake are both in their gourmet scum merch, which is really cute. So Joey got a t-shirt and Snake got a crew neck sweater. I actually prefer the crew neck sweater. It's like it's got a really good color scheme.
Love it.
So as soon as Joey gets home, there's another phone call for him, this time from Shane's mom. Shane never came home from the concert last night, and she's trying to find out where he is. Joey tells her that he saw him leave with Luke.
This is a lot.
Yeah.
This is like, it's officially a lot for Joey. Like, so we were literally just talking about how he was doing his best to be like cool about this. And then like the next thing that we see, he like turns right around into this conversation with another friend of his, like his mom. And this kid is like missing. And so like, I'd say both of these situations to a degree are like a little related. Like when I was like first watching this episode, part of me thought that the phone call that Joey's mom was getting was Wheels' grandma. And so like, so it's like it's like kind of coming at Joey from multiple angles at this point.
Yes. And he really doesn't know anything because only Tim was there when Luke and Shane took acid, and then everyone else kind of showed up later, and they maybe weren't even aware that they were like on anything. So Joey is like being honest, as honest as he can be with Mrs. McKay, because he really, that's all he knows is that he was with Luke, basically.
Yeah.
And Joey's mom is just kind of doing reception and laundry today. She's having a busy little weekend. She's been doing laundry like each time the phone rings.
A lot to get done.
A lot of laundry to do. All right, so back to Wheels, and we get a montage of him trying to hitchhike along the highway while the Zit Remedy demo plays. What'd you think of this?
On first watch, I was sort of like, yeah, okay, but I definitely got it. Like it's pretty cute. I don't know. There's something about it that's charming.
It's almost like a little like music video for the song, because we hear the whole demo and it's the version that they recorded together.
Yes.
And Wheels is sort of like, I don't know if it was supposed to be implied that he was listening to it or singing it to himself. He's sort of like doing like air guitar and stuff, but he's just kind of like, it almost seems like this moment before reality sets in where he feels free.
Yeah,
like he's left the situation. He doesn't know what's going to happen next. And it just feels like he's doing something that like he decided. He's like excited.
It's like a classic montage scene where like, it's just like building up. And if you're in that situation, like it's sort of like anything could happen, right? Like it's like a literal crossroads, like sort of point. And so like, I'm sure he's sort of like enthusiastic and like very optimistic, thinking about, I'm going to end up somewhere new and I'm going to like actually reconnect with my like biological father. Like there's so many things that like, I'm sure he's like legitimately very excited about.
It seems like there's a lot of possibilities and nothing has really seemed that possible to him before. Like he can't face like, just going back to school, doing all these like kind of Monday things, but now it seems like maybe something exciting will happen.
Yeah.
All right, so he gets picked up by someone who drops him off at the exit for Port Hope, and then we get another voiceover of Mike reading the postcard before Wheels gets picked up again by a man in a station wagon.
So when I had to do a little research about Kings Highway 28.
Okay.
Which is the road sign that we see Wheels dropped off in front of from the first ride that he catches.
Okay.
And so coming from Toronto My best guess is this person was on Route 115, and between 115 and Port Hope, we get this stretch of Kings Highway 28, runs about 30 kilometers, which is about 18.6 miles away from Port Hope. That's like
Okay.
my best guess is that he is like basically a 6-hour walk from where he wants to go. If he
Okay.
doesn't like,
Where
if
he
he doesn't
gets
like,
dropped off, you mean, is still 6 hours away?
yes, when we see the
Okay.
road sign that says Port Hope South 28, like my best guess is that that's about where he's at, is about 30K away from Port Hope.
Okay. So all right, so he's still got a ways to go.
And yes, so you mentioned the not suspicious at all station wagon that pulls over and gives him a ride. Actually, I kind of wanted to say, I don't know what it was about this shot that we get as the car pulls up, but something about it was like really creepy. It's sort of like a front view of like as the car is pulling up, it's sort of like the car is approaching the camera and like stops when it takes up like sort of half of the field of the like camera shot. And then you just in the other half kind of see wheels like jogging up to get to the passenger door. Something
Which
about
just
it.
gets like thrown open for
Right,
him.
right. Like so plain, but so ominous to me. I don't know what it was.
Because the first car, we don't see much of it.
Right.
We just sort of hear the voice of the driver. It sounds like it's a woman. And
Sure.
so, of course, it just seems totally regular, non-threatening, like everything's fine here. But I get what you're
Yes.
saying, where even when the station wagon pulls up, something feels wrong.
Just something about the way the framing comes together. I'm just trying to shout out like whoever kind of shot this and directed this scene. Like I feel like it accomplished whatever it was that they were trying to do. Like if that was the intention, like just a very unsettling like set of like sort of.
Well, and this is a Jan Moore Kit Hood ep. So,
nice.
it feels like they come in for like the kind of big episodes. This
Sure.
whole episode, it has, the way that it has this long montage, like the whole way that it's put together feels a lot more cinematic. It feels like it's got like a big episode feel to it.
Yeah, like just this montage that we were just talking about. Like we don't usually get montages, I don't think, on this show.
Yeah, I'm sure there's been a few, but I feel like it's usually like more school related, and this is all primarily happening outside of school. Because
on a highway.
he's not going to school. Yeah, the highway
Right.
that he's been like looking out at. I mean, maybe not the exact highway, but it's what he's been like thinking about and kind of like manifesting in his room while he calls his grandma an old bag. So the cops show up at Luke's house to ask him about Shane, and he tells them after the concert he went one way and Shane went another. The cop asks if Shane was acting unusual or took any drugs, and Luke lies and says Shane doesn't do drugs.
I don't know anyone who does that stuff.
I mean, I will say on Luke's behalf here, he knows it's ACAB all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And don't talk to the cops. Unless you have a lawyer present. Do not talk to the cops.
He is a minor, just like having this conversation about potentially illegal things with this cop.
So good for Luke here, I will say.
He doesn't really know what's going on. I think the cop maybe just says like, well, Luke didn't come home, but no one really knows how much to worry or be like concerned. And so he's not going to admit to anything like without having to.
Don't talk to the cops ever. Don't do it.
Yeah.
This is me talking to everyone, not just Luke. Don't talk to him.
And if we get into it, like Luke is a person of color. Like this is Canada. This is a white cop like at his house. Like we said, his parents don't seem to be around. Like, yeah, he doesn't really know what the situation is going to turn into. So I don't know how I feel about Luke overall, but like Luke not wanting to talk to the cops, it's like, yes, okay.
A+. Good job.
So Station Wagon Man has a lot of questions for Wheels, which start to get very uncomfortable very quickly. These are like, do you have a girlfriend? Do you like girls? Do you ever fool around? Like, you can tell that the questions are getting, and Wheels is pretty open at first, but then you can kind of tell that the questions start to become inappropriate and like uncomfortable.
Well, and even before this, like Wheels was like giving this dude way too much info and like telling him that everyone calls him Wheels because his last name is Wheeler. So this man,
Right.
this strange man, like knows this kid's last name, and just it kind of keeps going from there. Like Wheels just giving too much information, and then yes, like you said, then it starts getting like creepy.
No sense of stranger danger.
Yeah.
Well, and Wheels, he, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but he sort of says to Joey and Snake, like, I can handle myself. I've been around. And he kind of says the same thing to this dude in the station wagon, like, oh, I can take care of myself. So he thinks that, like...
Oh, yeah, and he also tells him that he's 15 in that interaction, too, which just feels like another mistake.
He has no sense of, like... maybe I should be reserved or like cautious or anything. He's just being extremely open. All right. So Station Wagon Man tells Wheels he needs to make a delivery, and then he drives down a dirt road past some farms to a remote area where he pretends to have car trouble so he can pull over. He basically tries to molest Wheels, but Wheels jumps out of the car and threatens him with a rock, so the man throws his backpack out of the car and drives off.
Hell yeah. Like a boss.
I mean, I guess he can sort of take care of himself. Like, he does get himself out of this situation, but he also got himself into this situation.
Yeah. And you're not going to believe this, but I did even more map research. So this is...
What? Mr. Garcia really inspired you this week.
We've got this episode of this podcast is everywhere. We're a wrestling podcast, and now we're also a true crime podcast.
Yes.
Because I believe that as he was going down Route 28 with Wheels, this man made a right-hand turn on 4th Line Road, which is 8 minutes away from Port Hope City Center. I think that this guy saw the very last possible sort of like turn off and then like decided that was the time to be a massive creeper.
Wait, so they were nearly at Port Hope.
This is my belief, because there is just one tiny road called 4th Line Road. It's got like it when you go on Google Maps, it looks more paved than it potentially does in this scene from, almost 30 years ago or whatever. And so I think
current map, they've paved this road.
That is my belief, but it just is similarly like sort of like spotted with trees, and then there's like a wooden like sort of farm fence with farm animals. Like this, to me, this feels like the road. I believe that we are on 4th Line Road off Kings Highway 28. 8 minutes outside of Port Hope.
I'm surprised that's like so accurate. Also, do you have like a murder board or something where you're like tracking all of this info?
I'm over here looking like the Charlie Day meme. Yeah.
All right. Well, if I don't know if the statute of limitations has run out, but we've got the evidence. So we end this episode with a freeze frame on Wheels standing at a literal crossroads.
Wow. Oh man, big up.
Big up. Yeah.
Oh. What else is there to say?
It's definitely like a cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're ending with Shane is just missing and Wheels has been stranded in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, essentially also missing, basically. Like
to his grandparents. You're absolutely right.
To everybody, basically, because I mean, he told Joey and Snake generally where he was going, but like he clearly does not know where he is anymore. Like I needed Google Maps to even guess at where he might be, but like he's basically in the middle of nowhere.
His grandparents would have no idea.
No.
Like, he got that postcard, but unless they talk to Snake and Joey, at least they know his plans.
Right.
And with Shane, it seems like Shane didn't talk to anybody. We don't know what happened with him. It's interesting to think of, often in the media we hear about women or like girls going missing. And so it is interesting in this instance, we have these two young men missing and for kind of different reasons. So one of them did run away.
Yeah.
And then the other one, we don't know what happened, but there's like drugs involved. So yeah, you're right. It is like a pretty, it goes there. Paul, do you need to address your enemies today?
I think just like going back to what I was saying about Luke earlier, where, you know, so I mentioned that I did mushrooms the first time that I did mushrooms as an older adult. It was something that I didn't really experience until later. But, you know, the person who introduced them to me was like extremely, for lack of a better word, like hospitable. We like hung out, we like were at their place. It was like an extremely like contained environment, and you know, kind of similarly to what Luke did here, like I got a lot of like info on like sort of what it would feel like, but it was way more of like a conversation, whereas here I think Luke is just sort of like pressuring Shane and like just sort of like making it into a dangerous situation where it's just like, you know, again, like you said, like these are teens, and just generally I don't believe that like teens and like people with like your brain doesn't really stop developing until you're 25, you know? So like do with that information what you will, but like especially with like teenagers, when like this is like major like developmental milestones are still happening. So it's just like these people just generally probably shouldn't be doing this. But like Luke, my man, like you're just like you're kind of being a dick. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah. All right. I think I need to address Luke as well. You're totally right. He's like facilitating this whole experience.
Yeah, and
so he has to take some responsibility for that. If you're introducing somebody to something like this, like you're responsible for them. And like we were saying, you know, like I was, you know, when I was sharing those facts, this can last for up to 12 hours. And so they're at the concert. I think like someone says they play like 2 hours nonstop or something.
Yes.
Which is also a very long time. my enemy is also Gourmet Scum. I'm like, 2 hours. Calm down.
That's a stadium level band set, bro. I don't know what to tell you about that.
But anyway, so they're only together for like, you know, like 2 hours. And so like, and then he's just like, okay, bye. See you
Bye,
later.
dude.
Like, no, you're still responsible for this person.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like Luke really like messed up here, because he clearly like introduced someone to this experience who wasn't ready for it, even though he was like, you don't have to take it. The subtext was like,
baby.
The subtext was like peer pressure. And then he just bounces, and he's just like, all right, well, good luck, bye.
Yeah.
So yeah, Luke really really sucks in this episode.
I guess I'm trying to say, like, I'm not trying to be like a drugs are bad kind of person, but like you gotta know like what you're getting yourself into or what you're getting someone else into, and like be a cool person about it.
You have to be aware of who's around you, and does this person care about you? Yeah. And are they going to be there for you if you have a bad experience?
Yep.
Can't relate.
I related to Snake this week. I would definitely be worried about my pal, and I would also definitely be the kind of guy a teacher would approach and ask to relay a message to a troubled friend.
And I would trust you to actually deliver that message.
Yeah, Snake kind of blew it, but yeah, well, you know, there was a lot going on, so
would it have really had an effect? Yeah. Like, yeah,
I'm not going to throw any shade
to his
there.
Grandma.
Yeah.
So I related to Tim in this episode because I was also a nerd, and I knew people doing psychedelic drugs in high school, and I also thought it was like scary and dangerous, and probably would have been like, it's full of poison. So yeah, I related to Tim, like, you know, he's just trying to like have a good time, and he's kind of like, this isn't what I thought we were doing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then I also related to unnamed maternal grandfather, because I too love to get cozy under a blanket and watch some wrestling.
Hey.
So, friend, what did we learn today?
Well, we learned that while there can be many types of families, there's always more to that than just the expression. And we already knew that, learning about being adopted was challenging enough for Wheels. And so here, each week, we get deeper and deeper into a situation that's even more challenging, which is losing your adoptive parents with then no real connection to your birth parents. We see how a situation like this can lead to a lot of issues and discontent. I don't know. I'm just, for me, I'm reminded by episodes of television like this that I'm really lucky to have a stable relationship with my adoptive parents, and I don't struggle with a need to know my birth parents in the way that Wheels does. I think that really drives a lot of sort of where we are now in this episode that we're talking about this week, that you already sort of addressed it earlier. It's been sort of a series of self-discovery with Wheels, where it's things that he just thought he knew to be true about his family life or not. So I guess for what did we learn, it's just sort of just not taking things for granted, I guess.
Today I learned that sometimes the most you can do for someone is to let them know you don't agree with their choices, but you care about them and you'll be there for them no matter what. Wheels and Shane are both dealing with life-altering situations that their friends can't really understand, and they feel powerless to change. Shane tries to escape through taking drugs he doesn't seem ready for, and Wheels tries to literally escape his situation by running away. Both of these decisions really hurt the people around them and ultimately push them further away from their support systems and make them vulnerable to more bad choices. There's really not much you can do when someone is determined to do what they want, except letting them know that they can always come to you and turn things around.
You can listen to I'm Sorry, Okay, a Degrassi podcast on Acast, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you enjoy what we're doing here at I'm Sorry, Okay, be sure to give us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts.
And thanks for listening. You could follow us on social media at I'm Sorry Okay Pod. OK is spelled O-K-A-Y. Or email us at I'mSorryOKPod@gmail.com. That's it for Taking Off Part 1. Next week we'll be watching Part 2.